Thursday, 4:40 p.m. I worked at Cormorant Equity for exactly 32 years. No complaints. No missed deadlines. I knew the numbers in that headquarters better than I knew my own reflection. I also knew Brian Gray, our CEO, a man with 2 luxury watches and no moral compass. My termination wasn't sudden. It was calculated. Precisely 24 hours before my official retirement, the moment my full compensation package was set to activate, they announced a minor personnel adjustment at the board meeting. I was being replaced by Brian's niece, 27 years old. Fresh MBA. Delicate wrists that made her Cartier watch look like a parody of authority. He said, "You've done great things, Robert. But we want to move forward with new energy." I answered, "Understood. Thank you for your honesty." I did understand. Just not what he meant. On my desk sat an unfinished contract. $100 million. The Cotton Industrial deal, 6 months of negotiation, 13 flights, and 2 hypertensive episodes. Balanced to the decimal. Ready to sign. They handed it off to the niece. No handover. No briefing. She didn't even know who Cotton was. Thought it was a law firm. I didn't protest. Didn't call the press. Didn't lawyer up. I simply walked out. Grabbed my coat. Shut off the monitor. Closed the folder full of more than just numbers. That folder held levers. Weak points. Contingencies. He said, "If you change your mind, the door's always open." I answered, "Don't worry. I'll find another." I packed my things. 32 years reduced to 1 box. They didn't know I'd been running parallel negotiations. That Cotton trusted me, not the brand. That within minutes of walking out, I sent them a message. "Circumstances have changed. I recommend pausing signature indefinitely." The deal froze. Like a heart under ice. I drove home to our warm, timber-framed house overlooking the lake. The maples were just beginning to turn. A coolness in the air hinted at autumn, and from the porch I could watch the sun melt into the water. There's a rocking chair out there. Usually, that's where Sarah sits. My wife. She's away on a business trip, Washington for 3 days. We've been married 30 years. She knows me better than anyone. Sometimes better than I know myself. The kids are grown. Both in college. The house is quiet now. Almost. I heard the soft scuffle of paws. Willow, our Labrador, came over and placed her head on my knee. I scratched behind her ear, poured a bourbon, and settled into the porch chair. I didn't feel defeated. I felt clear. They thought they had removed a gear. But they had pulled the axle. Friday morning, I received an email, not from the CEO, not from HR. From the niece herself. And what it said changed everything. Friday, 8:14 a.m. The email came from the CEO's niece. Not HR. Not Brian himself. Her. A personal address, no company signature. The subject line was just 2 words. "Can we talk?" I opened it slowly. Inside, carefully composed sentences, polite apologies, and a request to meet. But one line stood out. "I feel the deal's slipping. Please help me understand what I'm doing wrong." I poured coffee, added a splash of milk. Sat at the counter. Willow, our lab, was asleep under the stairs. I reread the message. Polished wording. But the fear beneath it was real. She wasn't begging. She wasn't dramatizing. She simply didn't want to drown. I replied 2 hours later. "We can meet. Not at the office. And not with your uncle." She agreed within minutes. We set it for 7 p.m., a quiet cafe on the far edge of town, the kind where no one's in a rush, and the coffee's strong enough to keep secrets. I spent the rest of the day sorting through documents I hadn't looked at in years. Old projections. Contingency reports. Notes from negotiations that never made it to email. I wasn't searching for anything specific, just reminding myself of what I used to know by heart. At 6:40, I got in the car. It was starting to rain, soft and even. The kind of weather that blurs streetlights and silences the impatient. I arrived early. She was late. She walked in without looking around. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Her coat looked more borrowed than owned. She spotted me and walked over slowly, like someone heading into a conversation they already regretted. She said, "I'm out of my depth. No one tells me anything. My uncle just said you walked away." I answered, "I didn't walk away. I stepped out of the game." She hesitated, then said, "I wasn't ready. I thought I was. But I'm not." I let that hang in the air. I wasn't there to comfort her. This wasn't a confession booth. It was a moment of accounting. She asked, "What would it take for you to come back?" I reached into my coat and pulled out a thin gray folder. I placed it on the table between us. She looked at it like it might burn her fingers. She didn't touch it. I said, "Read. Then we'll see who returns and who disappears." She finally reached for it, opened it slowly. Inside were not secrets. Not threats. Just clarity. A printed email chain between Cotton's general counsel and me. Handwritten notes along the margins, my notes. A clause I had drafted that never made it into the final version. And a timeline. One that didn't align with the company's version of events. As she read, her face changed. Not panic. Not fear. Just a slow understanding that what she was handed was never a foundation. It was a trap. I stood up. Said, "The choice is yours. But time's running out." I left her there, staring at the page, lips moving silently as if trying to rehearse answers for questions that hadn't been asked yet. I didn't go home. Sarah had texted. Her meeting in Washington was extended another day. 30 years of marriage teaches you to read between the lines. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was reminding me that I knew how to be alone. On the road, my daughter called to ask about her winter internship. Her voice was rushed, cheerful, completely unaware of the storm I was standing in. Then my son messaged a photo of a laptop. "Think this model's worth it?" I answered both. Calmly. Even joked a little. They didn't know that their father, at that moment, wasn't heading toward comfort. He was walking the edge of something he'd spent years building, and now had to quietly undo. At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang. No name. No number. Just the words, "Encrypted call." I answered. He said, "You've gone too far." I said, "I'm just getting started." I hung up. Pulled over near an old church I used to pass on the way to work. Sat there in the quiet. The rain had stopped, but the roads still gleamed like mirrors. I rolled down the window and let the air in. There was a time when a call like that would have shaken me. Now, it was confirmation. I was finally hitting the right nerve. 36 hours later, she'll write again. But not about the deal. She'll simply ask, "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" And in that moment, I'll realize she's found something I never even looked for. And when that happens, it won't be their walls that start to crack. It'll be mine. Saturday, 9:02 p.m. The email arrived in the evening. Same tone. Same economy of words. The subject line: one question. Inside, just a single sentence. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" I read it once. Then again. It wasn't blame. It wasn't accusation. It was something else. Recognition. And maybe fear. I didn't answer immediately. Set the phone down and stepped onto the porch. Night had fallen. The lake was glowing under the moon. Willow raised her head, watched me for a moment, then settled back down at the door. She didn't need reasons. She always sensed when I was thinking about something I didn't want to say aloud. The house was still. Spacious, warm, quiet. Made of wood and time. Inside, the scent of oak, of old books, of coffee. The kids' rooms were neat, untouched. They're both in university now, each in a different city. They don't visit often, but their presence lingers, in the bookshelves where we built model rockets, in the kitchen where we baked that pie the night my son broke his arm. Sarah would be home in the morning. Her message was short. Flight's at 7:20. I'll be there for breakfast. We never did dramatic homecomings. We just knew how to sit next to each other in silence. Tomorrow, at breakfast, there would be no talk of business. Just coffee, eggs, and a glance that said everything. I looked back at the message. Something inside me shifted. I pulled out an old notebook, the one I used during my first 15 years at Cormorant. The handwriting was a bit shaky, but clear. On the last page, in pencil. If they ever start asking the right questions, don't hide. Answer. I replied. I knew some things. But you found something no one was supposed to. She answered quickly. It wasn't in your folders. It was in the fund archive. Someone tried to delete records of old loans. Do you know what it is? I did. And I remembered. It was a signature. One I gave in 2013. A document brought in by Howard Singer, our general counsel at the time. He said, standard authorization. Just a technical step. I didn't read it. I signed. We were chasing a new portfolio then. I thought I had control. The document vanished into the archive. Singer died 2 years ago. Now, that forgotten sheet of paper was the key. The open door. The thread someone could pull to unravel everything, and erase me with it. I stood. Walked to the bookshelf. Moved 2 volumes. Behind them, a slim metallic flash drive. I knew what was on it. My own private backups. Including that signature. Date stamped. Metadata intact. I called the number I hadn't touched in 3 years. He answered instantly. He said, You want me to pay for their mistakes? I said, No. I want you to pay for yours. Pause. Then he said, You won't take this public. I said, You're right. I won't. And I hung up. This wasn't about the Cotton deal anymore. This was about trust. About what happens when a system, built on unchecked assumptions, starts to crack. And the girl they put in a chair because of her last name, she was the only one who didn't look away. She opened the wrong drawer. And understood what she saw. I stepped into the kitchen. Set the kettle on. Willow followed, sat beside me. I placed a hand on her back. She exhaled through her nose, then rested her head on my knee. There was more sense in that dog than in most boardrooms I've seen. The kettle clicked off. It was past 10. Sunday morning, a letter arrived. Not digital. Paper. Sealed with the fund's crest. Inside, no threat, no apology. Just one line, handwritten. You know where it's kept. We're coming. Sunday, 7:38 a.m. The envelope was on the top step. Heavy paper, fund's crest embossed. No return address. No postage. It hadn't come by mail. Someone had placed it there themselves. Inside, just one handwritten line. You know where it's kept. We're coming. No signature. Male handwriting. Clean. Unfamiliar. I stood there holding it, and the air inside the house shifted. Not tense, alert. As if the walls had started listening. Willow walked into the hallway, stopped by the window, and let out a low growl. Not toward the yard, toward the house. She never growled for nothing. I slid the envelope into the bottom drawer. Locked it. Then placed the key inside a book on the shelf. Not paranoia. Just discipline. By 8, Sarah was home. Tired, focused, as always. She walked in with the scent of airport coffee and distant rain. No questions. Just a nod, a hug, and straight to the fridge. She said, You didn't sleep. I said, Had things to think through. She nodded again. No pressing. Just eggs, toast, 2 mugs of black coffee. The normal Sunday rhythm. And yet I had a sharp, quiet feeling this might be the last morning that felt untouched. After breakfast, I went out to the workshop. My space. My mess. My files. I pulled a box marked Q4-2013. Inside, the original signed document. Paper. Ink. No digital trail. And beside it, Singer's letter. The one I thought had never been sent. Except, it had. In the bottom corner of the envelope was a faint, nearly erased mark, a fund archive registration code. Internal. I knew what it meant. Someone had opened that letter. Someone with access. And now, they were using those words Singer wrote for me, to back me into a corner I didn't even see until now. I walked back outside, took a breath, then made a call. A woman from the European side. Quiet operator. Trusted once. She picked up. She said, "You figured it out, it's not the fund, is it?" I said, "No." "And Singer's letter, it reached someone else." "Someone inside." She was silent for a moment. Then, "That means you have only one line left." I said, "What line?" She said, "Your home. And everything you've kept in it. If they reach that, you won't see the door they walked in through." I hung up. Walked back in. The phone buzzed again, video call. My daughter. She grinned. "Hey, Dad. One of our professors just showed us this data encryption structure, called it Singer's structural cipher. Said it was an old fund method. Sounded familiar, huh?" I smiled. Automatically. "Very familiar." We hung up. I sat at the table and realized. They had already reached in. Not through me. Through my children. Through archived theory. Through memories I thought were buried. And it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. That evening, a second envelope arrived. Not paper. A small black case. Inside, a flash drive. One video file. An old boardroom recording from a camera I was sure had been shut off 8 years ago. In the video, me saying one sentence. A sentence they could now weaponize against me. Sunday, 7:46 p.m. The second envelope was in paper. A smooth, unlabeled plastic case. It clicked open quietly, intentionally subtle, as if whoever sent it wanted me to hesitate. Inside, a flash drive. One file. Boardroom_May 2016_final.mp4. The date meant a lot. May 2016. A closed session on subsidiary assets. I remembered how much was handled off record. I'd signed the shutdown order myself, or so I believed. I loaded the flash drive on an offline laptop. The file played immediately. Familiar boardroom. Peter Gray, myself, 2 lawyers, a pair of Dublin reps. Audio crystal clear. My voice. "If this leaks, you disappear first. Everything else is just numbers." Peter nodded. Not in fear. In agreement. I rewound. Watched again. That's when I saw it, in the glass reflection. A woman. Standing just outside the room. Still. Unmoving. Watching. Not part of the meeting. Not in any documentation. And I knew that face. Not Sarah. Claire. My ex-wife. I hadn't seen her in over 7 years. The last time, a courthouse. Quiet end. No words afterward. Just distance. No contact. No traces. As if she'd erased herself clean. And yet, here she was, standing just outside the frame of my life, in a building she was never supposed to be in, during a moment she shouldn't have known existed. Watching me. I paused the file. Closed the laptop. Removed the battery. Slid the drive back into its case. The phone vibrated. One message. No name. A photo. Sarah. On the steps outside a federal building. Documents in hand. A man standing beside her. Not touching her. But close. Caption. "Are you sure she's still protected?" No context. No signature. But a weight settled. Not guilt. Not fear. Something colder. Recognition. They weren't just threatening me. They were mapping the edges of my life, seeing who else was left unguarded. Monday morning, the signal will disappear. The phone will be silent. The internet dead. Electricity will stay on. Everything else will vanish. That's when I'll realize I'm not being watched. I'm being isolated. Observed. Not as a player. As a liability. Monday, 6:10 a.m. The silence didn't arrive with alarms. No blinking lights. No system pings. Just absence. Wi-Fi dead. Cell signal unreachable. VPN unresponsive. Satellite uplink flat line. And yet power was on. Water flowing. The house wasn't shut down. It had been disconnected from me. I stepped outside. The air was sharp, clinical. Willow stood beside me, unmoving, her ears tense. On the mailbox, a black package. Inside, a pair of pajamas my size. And a book. Human Behavior in Isolation, RAF Observations, 1961 to 1983. No message. Just implication. Someone had begun my quiet decommissioning. I wasn't just a strategist. I was a connector. Jurisdictions, leverage deals, asset cloaking, they ran through me. I authored transitions others couldn't decode without the oral map I carried in my head. Erase me, and the structure remains, but without meaning. Or worse, someone else gets to rewrite it. When I returned inside, Sarah was making coffee. I said, "No signal." She replied, "Maybe the provider's down." She looked tired but familiar. The way she poured, touched my shoulder, handed me the cup, unchanged. And in that moment she felt like the only constant left. She didn't ask questions. Didn't press. Just sat with me in silence, calm, grounded, like she knew when to speak and when to simply stay close. Later, I went down to the basement archive. Behind old crates, a box marked Actual. Inside, photocopies from systems long decommissioned. One caught my eye, Cotton Ventures Deal, 2012. 2 signatures. Mine. And a second, Claire D. Hallberg. Claire. My ex-wife. She hadn't been part of the fund. Not officially. But the signature was original. Not a forgery. That meant someone included her, with intent. And never told me. By evening, another envelope appeared. Gray. No return. Inside, a single white card. One word, handwritten. Hallberg. I flipped it over. Blank on the back. No message. Sarah walked in, glanced at the card. I said, "Looked familiar." She didn't respond. Just took her cup to the sink. Calm. Present. As always. An hour later, a new message arrived, not by phone. It was slipped under the door. Printed. Anonymous. Text. When Sarah was away, are you sure she stayed with her colleagues? Did you check? Or just trust her? On Tuesday morning, Sarah won't return from her run. Her phone will still be on the kitchen counter. Willow will sit by the front door, unmoving. And on the table, a folder I've never seen. Inside, her passport. And a second one, with a different name. Tuesday, 10:20 a.m. 2 passports on the table. One in Sarah's name. The other, her alternate life. On the flash drive, proof. Tobin's voice, wire transfers, layered schemes. Sarah's voice, calm, decisive. He'll sign it himself. Just don't remind him who he used to be. I did sign. Back then. Not now. 40 minutes later, archived footage from 3 years ago. Hidden camera. Tobin and the managing partner. If he exposes the Cotton structure, the whole house burns. Let him walk. We'll replace him. The girl from the family won't ask questions. The niece. Just a cover. A disposable name. The flash drive shuts down on its own. Then, a call from Claire. She said, "This wasn't revenge. I gave your name back. Everything I found is now with the SEC. Tonight, Cormorant will be in the news." I turned on the TV. CNN. Headline. Cormorant Equity accused of fraud. Federal investigation underway. Their faces on screen: Tobin, the directors, the niece. Each caption: charged with conspiracy, awaiting detainment. Later that evening, a digital signature: Sarah's signed divorce agreement. No comments. No alimony. No access to my data. 2 days later, a call from London. They said, "We've been watching. Your architecture is what the new market needs. We want you to lead Global Strategic Asset Holdings." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Send the terms. We'll negotiate with professionals, not amateurs who thought they could swap me for a smiling intern." A month later, contract signed. $47.3 million in year one. 19 clients followed me. Cormorant, under criminal investigation. And Sarah? Last I saw her was on the security camera, closing the door behind herself. Wello didn't even lift her head. Just sighed. She knew, like I did, this scene was no longer part of the script. Now I live by the lake. Mornings are clean. Coffee is black. The calls I take are real. And at night, I don't wonder who's at the door. Because now, I'm the one standing behind it. The end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Mike's Final Move. Leave a comment, it means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.